guest today. John Dye is the owner, or I guess original founder of Balance Claims. Were you the founder?
No, no, no,
No,
no.
no,
Let's
no.
let's
So,
correct that. I am the founder of Art of the Supplement,
part
which
of the
was
sub-
acquired by Balance Claims.
that makes more sense. I've been actually
That makes
wondering
so
that
much more
for a while.
sense.
That was going to be my first question. I thought maybe I just wing it. Maybe I right. I was
No,
way
no,
off.
it's good, dude. I've had that. I've
Oh,
had people say that before, but no. Troy Clymer, Eric Hepler, Josh Roseboom. They were the three main founders of Balance Claims, and then
okay.
but we're part of an ownership group, if that makes sense. So I do
Yeah.
retain some level of ownership.
So you do run the American Contractor show, though, which
Yep.
is another live stream show, but you have videos that are posted out from time to time as well.
Yeah, we
Oh, you
do,
have one?
and we put out quite a bit. In fact, this is kind of weird because I'm not used to being on this side of of the the question and answer. I'm used to being you in this case. So, getting to do this is kind of interesting. But yeah, the American
Yeah,
Contractor Show
let's
is
do it
something that
because we're
we.
prepared to grill you. We're gonna dig down deep, bud.
Okay,
Hang in.
let's do it.
It's gonna be great.
John, what were you going to say? Finish that up.
Oh no, I was gonna just say, like, I mean, I was gonna give a shameless plug to
Yeah.
the American Contractor Show here, and tell people, this is one of the coolest things that's out there. It's a twice a week show that we put on for contractors. It's on Facebook and YouTube and everything else. I know you've been on the set, Matt. We didn't get a chance to shoot at during RoofCon, but I know we'll get to do it soon for sure. But we're just
Yeah.
trying to provide content and provide as much free information to help contractors and just kind of information on what's going on in the industry. We do a lot of contractor showcases, that kind of stuff, and so it's just fun.
I was watching his show, which was live earlier today, and he had London Krauts on there talking about how public adjuster fees should be paid by the insurance carrier, and I became a big fanboy after I heard him say those things. And London is going to be I guess he's going to be in the crowd getting questions from the crowd during the PA panel at the Win the Storm conference, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that argument. It's incurred cost, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you can be in a state where the attorney's fees are paid, it definitely helps the insured because they have a lot more leverage if it's likely to get paid.
Right. Certainly.
So that definitely makes a big difference.
Yeah,
So
it does. And London is doing a great job with that, and I think he's partnering up with AAA on a lot of that stuff on that legislation. I think it's is it John Black or John Daly? One of his partners is a big push on that.
that makes a huge difference. I even commented AAA after he said that on the live stream that their mission is to get those fees paid, and it provides so much more leverage to the insured because there's the ability for them to gain some representation without having to come out of pocket so much. It makes a huge difference on claims, at least for attorneys. We live in a state, Remington is an attorney in the state of Georgia, where attorneys' fees don't get paid unless bad faith is achieved, which is what,
Near
0.005% of all claims.
Yeah,
Pretty
that's
sure I'm not
correct. I
wrong.
mean, essentially, you're going to have to take it all the way to the mat. By when I say that, I'm talking about trial. You get a verdict in your favor, and then the judge themselves determine one way or the other that this should actually be presented to the jury to decide if there's a bad faith claim or not. So there's a lot of hurdles, and that's different compared to practice in the state of Florida as well, where we get attorney's fees almost on every single case. And that's without taking it to trial, obviously. So completely.
But that's the fight right now, is getting that same fee paid for on the PA side, because it's not fair to a homeowner that they've got to hire a public adjuster to take these claims on when it's the insurance carriers are forcing them into that situation to prove that they're not acting properly and to have their own representation, which should all be, it's part of indemnification. That's true indemnification. Otherwise, it's not true indemnification.
I think that that's true, but the real question becomes then, and maybe you can answer this, John, if the insured hires the public adjuster before filing the claim, how do you know if the public adjuster was ever needed And do you think that the fees for the public adjuster should be paid by the carrier in that case?
That's a great question. And that's going to have to be something that's going to have to be discussed. How I'm not a public adjuster though, so I'm an IA or was an IA. Let me ask you a question, Matt. How often does that scenario play out?
That was going to be my question as well.
It honestly, about 50% of our claims we get from the very beginning.
Okay, that's much higher than I thought.
A higher percentage. But I know that we're unusual in that regard. That isn't typical for a PA. Most of the time, a public adjuster is sought out after there is a big problem, kind of like an attorney. You don't hire an attorney when you don't have an issue.
Right.
But I can tell you the claims that we get involved from the beginning where we actually file the claim, they're so much smoother, Everything is
let me ask you this question. Does the carrier, if they have to, okay, so let's say this scenario is playing out, does the carrier then still hire an IA to handle the claim, or do they have an in-house adjuster that handles it? Does it save them money that they don't have to go that route because the public adjuster was involved from the beginning?
A lot of times there is a different adjuster involved, someone that's a little bit higher level or more authority if a PA is there from the beginning. They don't do the virtual assists if there's a public adjuster, for example. A lot of times, Weston Link, the guy that we just posted up there, he's another PA. He runs a thing. He's a rep for ClaimBot, kind of like the deal that Jason, the virtual PA is it's similar in the way that it's set up, but they do 50 to 75% of theirs are before the claim is filed. We get a different adjuster. That adjuster usually knows more because they want an adjuster on those files that isn't going to be a problem or do something wrong so that we can.
So the carrier's paying less on their part. So yeah, your fee should be included.
I think so.
I'm just going to say that I think it should.
I think it should be, but I can understand kind of if this is the way it's set up, I think that would be okay. If you only get the PA fees paid, if just like with attorneys in some states, if an increase is achieved by getting a PA involved, but if they're there from the beginning, then there isn't an increase. It's the whole claim was there from when the get-go happened. So
it's interesting.
It is
interesting.
And
now this is an interesting question here.
I mean, you're used to doing supplements and things, and a supplement you're able to track and put some metrics to adding to a claim only. Have you ever been involved in a claim from the beginning on this side?
As a supplementer? No, rarely. As an IA, I have.
I don't know how you would ever be that way with it as a supplementer.
Well, I will say this. No, we've written estimates for contractors from the very get-go when they want an estimate, especially this year with COVID, where a lot of contractors were writing estimates before they were actually, because they weren't sending out adjusters, so the carriers were asking for supplements or for estimates at the very beginning. So we did get involved in writing what we call shells, which are just estimate only claims. We didn't, at that point, we're not supplementing. We're just writing the estimate. And we do have a lot of contractors that use us for just that service. They want to do the rest of the work themselves. They don't want to handle, they just want a forensic estimate. Let's put it that way. Okay. And we'll write those. But that's the only time that we
the contractor's photos and scope.
Yep. Well, they send us the photos, the measurements, all the details on the job. And we basically translate that into an Xactimate for them, and it could be interior, it could be things that sometimes they're not used to doing. It could be roofs only. Like we do have some contractors that just hire us just to write all their estimates for their roofs. Like they don't care. Like they just want someone else to do it. They don't want to do it.
Do you ever write estimates outside of Xactimate?
Rarely. We try to stay. Yeah, we don't. I mean, if we can, if we're requested to, but most contractors want an Xactimate estimate, which is why they came to us. Now we don't necessarily 100%. We go off of real life numbers though. So we're gonna go through and write an accurate estimate and Xactimate. Because Xactimate, it's just a tool. The price list, while it's a good starting point, isn't necessarily, it's not the end all pricing that's out there. You got to make sure that the pricing is correct for what the actual costs that are being incurred on the project are. So if for example, plywood this year, right? We all know OSB went nuts. Xactimate to this day does not have a good price on OSB. So I have to go in and manually change that component and make it correct. And so that's where a lot of contractors, they don't understand how to get as detailed as they can within Xactimate. I mean, Xactimate's a middle number. It's 50% higher for contractors and some is 50% lower. So what does that mean? That means that you've got to know your numbers. And most contractors don't really know their numbers. They just figure, hey, I'm getting $320 a square. This is great. Let's move on. Well, it's a lot more. There's a lot more that goes into it than that. And it's something I've had to learn over the last couple of years, getting more involved in that actual part of the business.
Do you think if they just made up the numbers out of thin air and put together a non-Xactimate estimate with just some fictitious numbers that sound good, or from a completely different market, do you think that could be construed as fraud?
I think no matter what the estimate, no matter what platform you're using, Xactimate or not, you have to be able to back up that estimate. So if it's put in B, you got to be able to say that this line item, or if it's not even a line item, these numbers, this is how I came to this formulation of this is what it's going to cost to put this policyholder in their pre-loss condition. You got to be able to back that up. If you can't, and there's fluff in there where you do not have an explanation for money spent on the actual property or what you're doing with materials or labor, then that's when you're in that gray area of fraud, so to speak.
Is it fraud though? I mean, fraud would be, if you're a contractor, John, you're a contractor. You have the right to charge whatever amount you want, right?
Yep.
So
usually fraud becomes an issue.
Top of your head, is that not still okay?
I think fraud usually becomes an issue when people don't charge enough. And they got to find ways to get that money. When they're charging the right amount, or they're charging what's actually appropriate, or even what, maybe they've got a very healthy margin in there. Is that fraud to have a healthy margin? Is it fraud to make more money? I mean, if the carrier agreed to it, even in appraisal or anything else, if they don't agree with the numbers and they want to force it into a PA's hand or into appraisal, that's their prerogative by the policy. But contractors need to know their numbers. They got to set their margins accordingly to stay in business. Whatever that means, it's just what it means. They have to make a profit. Is it right or wrong? I mean, this is the problem with or this is the question when it comes to insurance claims, because you're dealing with other people's money. I don't know, man. This is a tough question, because in the retail world, it's a little different, and people definitely have a different say on that. So, because are you going to charge the same amount when you're doing retail? And here's the other side of it too. The flip side is, I know contractors that charge more in the retail world than they do in the insurance world.
Do you think if they charge a different amount, that would be considered fraud?
What do you mean by different amount?
If they charge a different amount, like he's saying, if for retail work they charged a different amount, a fictitious number that they made up per square for a roof, than they do if it's an insurance claim?
No, because typically a contractor in an insurance claim has a lot more legwork on the front end than just a retail job. Somebody coming up and saying, "Hey, I got this job. Can we do 1,100 a square?" I'm talking tile in Florida, something like that. Compared to a contractor meeting out the property, meeting adjuster, having that extra overhead, and that's why that price per square, if you will, goes up. That's always an explanation that I see. I saw Pate, he stated that he disagrees with me. And I just want to be clear about what I said earlier. If you have an estimate and you have items in that estimate and you can't back that up, right? Like, let's say that you say it's 50 squares, but in reality, it's only 30 squares. And you can't back that up. It's either one of two things. It's either a mistake or you're committing fraud, right? I mean,
you're talking about fluff.
Yeah, exactly.
Like let's say that someone's going to ask on their estimate that they want a porta potty on the job, but yet they're never intending to actually bring the porta potty onto the job, but they're going to ask for it. That's what we call fluff in
That's
the
right.
supplement
That
world.
I can see as fraud. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
If
fraud
the-
because you're
yeah,
clearly
it's an intent to
saying that
deceive.
you're going to incur a cost. Yeah, you
Exactly.
wrote that out, porter potty, X amount of dollars, and then no porter potty showed up. Same thing but contractors got to be careful because they ask for step flashing or L flashing, but don't actually replace that flashing, yet charge for it. Which that happens a lot in our industry as well. Which is
That happens all
why
the
I
time.
believe,
HVAC covers.
which is what gives the carriers so much leverage to impose the guidelines that they do on these adjusters when they write these initial scopes, because they know contractors don't do all that.
Right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right, John. And I agree with you 100%. There's a difference between saying that you need money for a porta potty when you have no intent to actually bring on a porta potty onto the site versus what a contractor's margins are if they believe they actually should be more than 20%, 10-10, give or take. Look, they can disagree with that all they want. That's just a disagreement compared to saying, we need this money for these items when you're not even going to actually have the intent to use those items. So that's, to me, that's a big clear.
That's fraud. Clearly.
Yeah. I mean, that screams fraud. Do you think, does Pate still disagree? Was that him saying that again?
No, Pate says, what is the cost of a square of tile roofing? An illusory figure.
I agree with Payne on that. I hate that terminology when people get into, well, we're talking 320 a square, we're talking 1100 a square, we're talking whatever. Dude, those numbers are not indicative of what that actual roof should cost.
Right.
Because those components vary from roof to roof. Every roof is so unique. They all have different stuff going on. And here's the other side of this equation too, is contractors consistently give free upgrades in these situations, right? And could that be fraud if they're taking the insurance proceeds, giving them something? I understand what betterment means,
That's a great question.
But I mean, at the end of the day, like if you're giving someone a laminated roof versus a 3-tab, which is, I understand the price difference is not that big of a deal, but that's the constant thing that there's other flip side of that equation. Should the policyholder be paying extra for that?
I love that question. It's a thought experiment more than anything else. There's really no real answer to that unless a court of law actually comes up with that statement. So is that a form of covering deductibles? I mean, there's all kinds of ways to construe that idea. Is there a court? Georgia probably hasn't said anything about that.
About what specifically? Like what exact issue?
Giving away free materials, is that
giving away a betterment of a claim and not charging extra for that betterment when the original materials are available.
Right. And let's just give an instance. Let's just say Atlas Chalet, right? It's a faux arc.
Sure.
You get it replaced, guess what? It's not going to be a 3-tab on there. Typically it's industry standard to go with an architectural shingle.
Well,
right?
the carrier's paying for that. Let's say the carrier's paying for an arc, but then you're going back with a 40-year, an IR shingle, and then you invoice for the full amount of the insurance policy or the insurance claim. But if you take that difference between the architectural shingle and the IR shingle, and that's the betterment amount, let's say it's $3,000 upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Does the insurance carrier owe for that RCV minus the $3,000 because that's the cost of the materials that it was supposed to be, or do they still have to owe the full amount of the claim because that's what they wrote for? I could argue that both ways.
You're on a fine line there if that's what you do. And that's the whole basis of providing an ACV check, seeing what it actually costs, and then providing that difference between the ACV and what the actual incurred costs are, right? That's the whole premise behind it. Even though it's not necessarily used that way.
I have a feeling we're going to be on this subject for a while. We really need to take some questions from the audience, though.
I totally agree, because this could go down a rabbit hole.
Exactly. Before we take a question, I want everybody just to look at this tie. Look at this. Look at this festival.
Oh yeah. This tie is epic.
Isn't it great?
It's something serious.
I wanted to wear a bad Christmas sweater. My wife went on an epic hunt for me, and she came up with this instead, and it is so much better. It is a sweater, by the way.
However,
it's a sweater
we do
tie.
have a Facebook user who is upset that Matt is not wearing Christmas lingerie.
You don't know
I'm
that
I
I'm
was
not.
about to say that's an
You
assumption.
have no idea what I'm wearing under this. This is tied
Wow.
to something.
So we have a
Love it.
question
All right.
from Josh
Is that because of
Friedman.
that photo that you posted, Olivia?
Absolutely.
Oh my God! Did you see that, John? Jeez.
I did not. I have to go back and find this.
Give her way too much leeway. She put my face on top of a
Mean Girls.
Mean Girls thing. They were wearing these skimpy outfits, and my face on every single one of those. I mean, it was funny. It was hilarious. But
All right.
Yeah,
So
you
from
should.
Josh Friedman, here's my question. When did itemization even become a binding agreement?
already,
Isn't an exactimate nothing more than an undisputed offer of settlement?
I feel like we're going into the lump sum conversation here somehow. Because he's talking about the difference between itemization and itemization really. And first off, if done correctly, itemization is not a bad thing, in my opinion, at least. But that's the problem is especially carriers. They, as an IA, my itemization was very, very off because of the guidelines I had to follow. So it was never really correct. I mean, waste factors are never 100% correct from the get-go. You got to use massively important tools just to get the waste factor right. We're talking ridge cap and starter is never correct. And then you're talking also synthetic felt versus 15-pound felt. Sometimes you're talking all the little details that go into it. I don't think it's a binding arrangement.
Itemization invites argument from the carrier. If you can do a lump sum, if they set a general scope of work and you can put together a bid for that general scope of work without having to itemize each individual little thing like Exactimate does, it's probably best. But there's a lot of cases that involve the term items. I mean, you could probably talk about Bell versus Liberty and things like that.
Lamb v. Allstate.
Lamb versus Allstate.
There's a bunch. There is a bunch. Exactimate at the end of the day is just a platform, right? To formulate how much it should cost to put that policyholder in the pre-loss condition. I've had it where, hey, I just get one lump sum number, send it into an insurance carrier, and they agree to it. There's no need. You're not forced to use Exactimate, but we are essentially tailoring the way we do business to conform with how the insurance company wants us to do business to try to make things easier on us. And that's why we use Exactimate.
That's the only reason why we use Exactimate. We use Exactimate because it's the insurance company's language. If I don't use Exactimate and I come in there with the lump sum, especially as a supplementer, I mean, we handle, 12,000 claims this year. If we went in there with a lump sum, our turnaround times would be insane because there's no way that the call center adjuster is going to understand what I'm asking for, and it's going to, every single one will get escalated. Whereas if I come in with an Exactimate, at least they have some understanding of what I'm asking for, that they can then justify their payment with the right amount of photos, the right amount of stuff. It's like, okay, well, at least we're somewhere and we can move on. This is the time, value proposition here. Where is it worth it to keep pushing with the lump sum, even though it's going to take me 4 times as long to get maybe an extra $1,000 versus just going with the itemized Exactimate that'll take half the time and get it at least 3/4 of the way there.
Exactly.
I think that there's a big difference there, and this really shows the difference between like a supplementer like you and a public adjuster. So if there is a lump sum, it's completely different. So if you didn't have an Exactimate, it would be much more difficult. Most of a supplementer's job is to argue line items and go from an item to item basis. And a public adjuster can really stick to the policy language of,
correct,
they owe for the reasonable cost incurred. And so if the reasonable cost incurred is the lump sum type of estimate, as long as that estimate represents a generalized scope of work, then I think the lump sum can be a lot easier to argue as a public adjuster once we have the coverages set.
Right.
But a lot of times we have to get those coverages set first. So in the way I understand it, Exactimate is a great tool. It's an estimate.
Right.
And insurance adjusters will use that. Public adjusters will use that tool in order to write an estimated value so that they can put
I
together
guess.
what the reserve should be. And then when a contractor gets involved, that contractor's actual reasonable cost for that scope of work is supersedes the exactimate. And that's what the appraisal language in the policies was really designed for, to protect the carrier from some gouging contractor for the scope of work that they have. If they disagree with the amount that the contractor is charging for that generalized scope of work, then they can send it to appraisal. It doesn't have to be the contractor.
Now let me ask you a question here. This is something that while I have both of you here, this is something I've started to see happening in the industry. And it's, in my mind, it's brilliant because it puts a contractor where he really needs to be. But let's say that a homeowner has damage to the roof, they file the claim, the contractor comes out, and rather than the contractor even looking at the scope of work, they sell the homeowner on a retail job, whether it be through financing or through something else. They sell that homeowner to where they can then take the insurance money, do whatever they want with it. They paid the contract for the work. The contractor's out of the equation. Let's say that the scope was $12,000. The contractor charged them $18,000. Let's just use this as an example.
Okay.
They signed an agreement. They financed the 18 grand. The contractor's paid. The contractor's gone. What recourse does the homeowner have at this point to go back and get the additional $6,000 that they incurred to replace their roof?
Let's take this in order. Let's do public adjuster and then attorney, because that's how it would go through in real life.
Right.
All right. So as
Okay.
a public adjuster, I would take that amount and I would send it to the carrier and say, this is the incurred cost for the scope of work performed. And the work has been completed. And here's a proof of law saying that this is how much it was. It's got the invoiced amount on there, released depreciation. And they would start to argue that there was a big difference. And one of the things that they would point out is that the estimate actually said that if there is a difference between what the contractor is charging and what we have on here, that you need to notify us before the work begins or before it starts, something along those lines.
Which is not in the policy, though, right?
It's not in the policy. It's just on the estimates usually. So the policy doesn't require that whatsoever. You're getting ahead of me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Geez, John.
I'm sorry. We're in the same road.
Calm your tits. All right. So I lost my train of thought. So if they say that the insured was supposed to bring that up to them prior, I mean, it was put in writing, it was sent to them, but it isn't in the policy. And the insuring agreement that they sign off on is what really matters, right? If they didn't send that to them and the contractor's already performed the work, then the contractor, the insurance carrier, doesn't even have the ability to go back on site to view the damaged property any longer. If they don't have the ability to go back and view the damaged property, how can they attempt to reconcile those differences? I think the appraisal language would be something that I would push for at that point and say, well, why don't we just go to appraisal and we'll let two appraisers determine how much the amount of loss should have been. Now, the insured has incurred that cost, so that would be what I would present to the appraiser that we hire. Here is the cost that the insured actually legitimately paid to get this work performed, and it would be up to the appraisers to go that route. Short of that, they could then—
Which is now forcing the policyholder to incur an additional cost by having to hire an appraiser.
They would. So if you're in a state where the attorney's fees would get paid, then it would be more beneficial to then go to an attorney instead of to an appraisal. So what would happen there?
Your steps that you just discussed were the exact steps that I would have said. Hey, let's get this proof of loss in. Let's get the documentation. Let's submit it.
I'm really good.
Let's see if they'll agree to this upload or not. The only addition that I would add to it as an attorney is say, you either pay this or I'm going to sue you. I mean, that's literally it at the end of the day. Or go over the cost benefit analysis of, should we knock this into appraisal?
You have no idea how much I want to say that to insurance carriers from time to time.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes they just don't care, so it don't matter anyway. they say, I mean, seriously, there'll be adjusters, desk adjusters, or even their attorneys prior to a lawsuit, and they say, well, just, hey, you need to sue us.
Yeah.
That's literally what they tell me.
So what would a contractor do?
Contractor's gone. They got paid.
They got paid. They ran away with the money. It's an evil
No, they
corporation.
they did their job and they left. They got paid
So
a
this
healthy
isn't a
margin.
restoration contractor, someone that's used to this industry.
This
This
is
is just
this is real life. Like this is happening right now. I know contractors that are doing this. Now, granted, I think
definitely
when you
happens with
sell,
water claims all the time. And it has been for a long time.
yeah, and it's happening now in our space, in the roofing space. Now, granted, I it's probably 5, 6, 7 out of 10 of these homeowners are probably just paying their monthly payment for that roof.
Mhm.
Maybe there was some value add there that, you know what, they took the $12,000 the insurance company gave them and they got a $12,000 loan essentially. Either paid that towards their loan or did something else on their house, increased the value, did something different with the money. And so they're not going after the insurance companies most of the time. But in a technical standpoint, though, if they incurred a $18,000 bill, they paid it, which they paid it, they should be that's indemnification. They should probably go after that full 18,000 from the insurance company.
100%. I think getting an attorney involved, especially in a state where the attorney's fees would be covered in this case, would be the smart move. I got a really interesting point of view, but I'm going to bring up what Pete said first. Is Matt making this a spoliation of evidence question? No, that's not what I'm doing, Pete. I did bring that up. I was thinking
And a prudent contractor would have taken a lot of photos.
they would have, but this isn't
They
a
would have
prudent
used
contractor.
they
This
would
is
have
someone
used
that isn't
full
used to
company
all this
cam
crap. Yeah.
and
they-
done things the right way. So
So if the contractor put them under a financing plan, does the carrier owe the finance charges at least up until the payment is made?
If it's not in the policy, those are different terms outside of that insurance policy. They're going to stick to the guns that whatever within the four corners of this insurance policy, that's what we are supposed to owe.
But the insurance policy is not a reimbursement policy. Generally, they're supposed to pay for this up front. Now, the insured jumped the gun,
Cost
didn't even
incurred.
try to get paid
Yeah.
in this
Still
scenario.
cost incurred.
Cost incurred.
Right.
And so it is incurred cost. Oh, that's what you're saying. You think that they should pay for that interest rate, at least up until the payment is made, because it's a cost incurred.
If they didn't, if they're paying interest, they're paying, all these fees or whatever else, who knows, to get the job done because they don't want to have a damaged roof over their house. I mean, in the insurance company's delaying it.
Hire you as a supplementer after a contractor comes in and leaves?
Not really. We don't work for policyholders because I think at that point, that's a
You're
PA's job.
representing. Yeah, that sounds like
We're a third party. We're a third party to the contractor. I mean, we're basically a contractor. At the end of the day, we're not. We don't hold a license. We're not carved out in any way. We're literally just doing the work that a contractor would do internally. They outsource it to us.
that makes sense.
Got it.
So we got another question.
Okay.
Joshua Friedman, does the insurer have the right to deny an increase because the contractor doesn't feel the need to explain himself to an adjuster who is being a drama queen? Is the contractor suddenly privy to the contract because the insurer decides so?
I mean, the insurer has that unless they have like some of those policies that are out of Florida there, where you've got your connected what are they called? They're almost like managed repair programs, but they're different, essentially, where they have to force a certain.
Deals,
Yes, those.
where the contractor is just here's the name of a contractor. It's up to you to sign their agreement and move forward or not.
Right. I mean, they have the right to pick their own contractor that they choose. But let's see, does he have the right to deny an increase because the contractor isn't feeling explained to an adjuster?
Obviously not. No, they don't have the right to deny that just because the contractor that doesn't represent the insurer doesn't provide any documentation about the increase.
Well, Matt, if I look at it this way, if a contractor comes with a highly significantly more than what they maybe agreed upon before the actual work occurred, and the contractor doesn't want to provide an explanation as to the increase in cost, then I think the insurance company does have a leverage on denying that claim. I mean, like you said, John, you got to have documents.
But it's still being an incurred cost, wouldn't it? I mean, we described a very similar scenario just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, but you got to explain that incurred cost, right? just not having an explanation for that incurred cost. I mean, you got to have those photos. You got to have exactly what you paid, what was incurred. You got to have some type of explanation. I mean, if you're asking an insurance company to pay for, let's just say, rotted decking after a contractor got on and was replacing a roof system, but you didn't provide any documentation to support the rotted decking and you making those extra steps that were not agreed upon in the first place. I mean,
Well,
I could see an insurance
let's say
company.
let's say the contractor though has a history that they have charged. I mean, I know contractors that are charging $1,000 a square for dimensional shingles. Okay, that's what they charge. That's their rate. What if the homeowner bought that roof from that contractor 5 years ago? They paid that amount. Now they're having to replace it, so they got to pay it again. And the insurance company say, well, Xactimate says it's only X amount of dollars. Your contractor is saying this much. Is the contractor forced to explain why his price is higher than Xactimate?
Why can't a contractor just look at the carrier and go, because that's what I charge?
Exactly. Why can't
should
they?
be able to do that. That's what they
Right.
charge. The insurance carrier doesn't have to justify why they're charging whatever amount their premium is.
And I think it circles back around. I think there's a difference between what a contractor's charging and their margins and profit versus doing a supplement and having the documentation to support that supplement, right?
Here's the other side of this too, though. If there is a dispute, shouldn't the dispute be that the insurance company invokes appraisal?
Yeah, that's what Josh is actually asking right here. That is the point of the appraisal. If they're
Right?
not going to pay it, but it's
I
the same
agree.
scope of work, then they disagree with the amount of loss. They should be demanding appraisal.
Right. I agree. I do. Saying that and it actually happening are
Why?
two different things.
Why?
but
What is
I
the
agree.
benefit? What is the
Why don't-
benefit to the carrier to force the insured to be the one to demand appraisal?
Yeah, exactly. Why don't carriers ever? And I've never had an
Happened to
insurance
me a
company
few
invoke
times,
appraisal.
but it's rare.
They do it in Florida.
It's
They
rare.
do it. They do it a handful of times in Florida, especially State
handful.
Farm. Yeah, State Farm will invoke appraisal in Florida a lot. And it's funny because in Georgia, you can't even get them to get into
You can't
appraisal,
get to appraisal with
ever.
State Farm.
So it's a whole different ball game.
It's been
But
2 years since we've been able to successfully even get to appraisal with State Farm.
Right. It just adds another layer of cost on the insured, right? They got to pay your appraiser. Now, okay,
Right.
there's an umpire fee, and then
But
that's
wouldn't
on
it be
top of-
beneficial for the carriers to just say, you know what, screw it, we're not going to talk to you guys. Let's go to appraisal.
That would be. Now,
here's
I
the
mean, if
deal.
they did it more
happened to
often,
claims that
Yeah.
we're both involved in a few times, but
Here's the deal. There is somebody that is crunching numbers over at these big insurance companies, and they're realizing that they are actually saving money by not invoking appraisal every time. That's
And
what they're
switching to
doing.
Geico.
It comes back to money, and that's what it is. It truly is.
yeah,
that's probably truth. I mean, that's got to be the reality of it, because some of the things that they do just don't make sense otherwise. So yeah. I mean, if you submit a proof of loss along with that invoice, then that would kind of force their hand into demanding appraisal, I think. So Jeremy's in effect is right.
yeah. Jeremy's got a good point there. Most people don't even know what a proof of loss is. Most contractors don't even know what a proof of loss is. I mean,
As a
when I was
supplement, you
traveling
don't deal with
around
those,
the
do you?
country, what's that?
You don't deal with those, do you? As a supplement?
No, I never deal with them. But when I train for Art of the Supplement, that's one of the things that I like to talk about, because most people don't know what a proof of loss is, and they don't understand that by not having that proof of loss in, what powers they are giving the carrier. I mean, most contractors only know that, we got to call the homeowner's got to call the insurance company and file a claim, and that gets the ball rolling, but they have no idea what a POL is. It's never been brought up. It's never been taught. It's never been explained. So we try to explain that so that at least they understand, like, hey, if your customer turns this in, because we're trying to let the contractors know, look, stop trying to be your customer's hero. Your customer needs to be their own hero. They need to understand this stuff. They're the ones they're party of the contract. You're a contractor. You're not party of the contract. You're just a contractor, right? And so by them being, but at the end of the day, though, they also are the
I had an
person that-
insured make me a cape once.
that's because you're a public adjuster.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's different. We're contractors. We're just contractors, man. Come on. We don't have any licenses, and I mean, in some states there are, but here in Indiana, there's no licenses.
You guys
So-
train PAs in the Art of the Supplement too? Have you ever had PAs from your course?
I've had IAs come. I've had PAs come. I mean, you get into some of these states where there's a lot of PAs. Chicago, for example, there's a lot of PAs in Chicago that don't have really good training because they're just a PA. And becoming an IA, I mean, when I became an IA, I went through the training. The training didn't say anything about, I mean, it was some policy stuff. And we talked about, how policies are broken down and some very like high level things. But as far as actually construction knowledge and understanding how this process really works its way through, they don't teach you that in IA class. Just doesn't happen.
Okay.
John, this is great information that you're providing to contractors or public adjusters or IAs that are listening right now. I mean, this, to me, contractors need to come to your conference and they need to hear this information. It's only going to give them more benefits going forward. What's that?
We need to plug that thing. You got a conference
coming
up.
So the conference that we're doing is a little bit different. The Art of the Supplement boot camps is when I really get into it. I mean, when I travel and do those, I spend anywhere from 6 to 8 hours with people in a room, and we just grind into like supplementing in the whole process, the insurance process, and how you should position policyholders, all that kind of stuff. The summit that we got coming up. So let me back up. So the boot camps, we do those once a month. We're not going to be doing one in January though. February will be the next one, just because of the summit. I'm pretty tied up. And then I do a master class as well, where we actually teach contractors, like we train their internal supplement people using our balance people that are dealing with thousands of claims at a time. We bring them into the classes. It's a 4-week course. It's really intense, but by the time they're done, I just did one this morning.
Wow.
So we do 8 sessions twice a week. They have homework. There's a whole lot of stuff. They got to take a class. Once they do pass that final exam, the exam at the end, they get a certificate. They're certified claims masters from Balance and Art of the Supplement. Our CEO signs off on it. It's a big deal.
If you're training them to do all that, doesn't that take away from future business for Balance?
You would think, but no. In reality, Balance has the philosophy that we like contractors that know how to do this. Mm-hmm. And you got to understand, like, to do any amount of volume in the supplementing world, you got to have a good supplementer by themselves that is writing estimates and supplementing. I mean, when I was doing it by myself, I could maybe do 30 claims a week. Yeah. Okay. So that's fine to have that person in-house. And we prefer that our clients have someone in-house that does that. But we know when a storm hits, we're the first person they call because we're the overflow. We're the overflow for 1,200 contractors. Okay. That's what we want to be. And the contractors that know how to do this send us better files, which makes us better at our job, versus the ones that don't do it in-house. They don't send us as good of files. So we prefer to train our customers on how to be good at this process so that when we are activated, we're 10 times more successful with them and they're 10 times happier with us. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's why we teach this. That's why Balance acquired Art of the Supplement, because they saw the opportunity. They sponsored the program for a while, and then they jumped in and actually bought the entire deal and said, we want this because our clients need it. And it was a great relationship. Troy and Eric are phenomenal people, Josh, the whole team, and we just melded so well together, and we've been able to spin off the Art of the Supplement, the podcast, and then now the American Contractor Show, and now we're actually evolving even further with the American Contractor Summit, which is the next thing. This is January 14th and 15th, and this is one of those things that I'm trying to get to the people that I know, the people that go to conferences, the people that we all see, Matt, they're going to be there. Okay. I've been watching the ticket sales. We've got like 600 people that have been interested in the event so far. We just announced it a couple of weeks ago, and it's growing really quickly, but we set it at only $100. It's $99 to register. Okay. And what we want to do with this is we have 12 speakers coming. So Jim Johnson's coming, Jonathan Sherwood, I'm not really supposed to announce this yet, but I'm pretty sure Paul Reed's going to be speaking. Nice. I just got a text from him earlier today, and we've been playing some text tag. We've got Chuck Doki. If you guys don't know who Chuck Doki is, he's one of the best kept secrets in our industry. He spoke at RoofCon, great friend of ours. He actually was the VP of sales for Able Roof. They're like $180 million a year, and he taught them how to build their sales system that generates that much. And we sat in a room in Breckenridge a few weeks ago, and he sold us a roof. And I'm serious, like I wanted to give him my credit card right then and there, because I was like, dude, I don't know what just happened, but I want this roof. And so, he's going to be speaking. Nathan Thibodeau is going to be with me. There's a whole Joseph Hughes. We talk about marketing, like all these people are doing keynote events, but the whole point of us putting the summit together, and especially doing it virtually, it's all virtual 100%. And they're coming to Indianapolis. I'm not letting them do a Zoom webinar or anything like that. I want them on my stage, on with our lights and everything. We've got a professional sound stage booked for this, and we're going to actually broadcast this out to the industry. So this is an event. This is not like a webinar. This is an event. This is a 2-day event, and it's only $99. And so people can log in, they can watch, they can be a part of it. They can chat, because it's all done within the Facebook event. So it's not, there's no special software. There's nothing else going on. It's not, and then they can go back and rewatch it again later.
It's going to have a report.
John, what's the website for individuals and contractors to register?
So they can go to the Facebook event, which is American Contractor Summit. They can search for that, or they can go to americancontractorsummit.com, and that'll have all the speakers, the breakdowns, all the, the bios behind them. Randy Brothers is going to be there. In fact, I don't have it in front of me. I should have been better prepared for this. Let me pull it up here.
You do your own show or anything regularly. So.
I know. Troy Clymer's speaking. Hunter Ballou is speaking. I know everyone, RoofCon and all the stuff he's doing at Cornerstone. Stan Bastic, he's the VP of sales for Atlas Roofing. Phenomenal. One of my favorite speakers in the industry. He's got such a cool personality and one of the greatest minds I've ever met. And then we've got some panels. 2 panels that are going to be going on. One's going to be there's gonna be some contractors that are doing over 10 million per year. They're gonna be speaking on a panel, and then there's another secret panel that I'm gonna announce that I can't talk about quite yet. But there's a really cool panel gonna happen. And so the whole point of this is I want to reach the people that you guys maybe have never been to a conference. Maybe you think it's pointless, it's dumb to go to conferences. I mean, yeah, you're gonna spend thousands of dollars on airfare and getting your people there and hotels and everything else and tickets. And yeah, it seems like it's a huge investment. Okay, cool. This is $99. If you want to get this level of thinking and kind of learn a little bit about what the hype is around these conferences, this will give you that taste of what's really going on. And it's going to be high level, high value, high quality broadcast, so that you guys are getting the best possible value out of an event like this. And we want to do more of these. Like this is the first one of many. Like the cool thing about this is virtual. I can do one every quarter if I want to. And it would be super easy to do. And so we want to
ask questions live.
Yeah, you'll be able to ask questions live. You'll be able to interact with the different people that are there. There'll be some vendors there that'll be able to help you with different things, and there'll also be the speakers themselves, but they will be on an actual stage giving a keynote address. And so it's going to be really interesting. We'll get some questions for the panels, I know, ahead of time. So Nathan will have a set list of questions he wants to ask the panel, different stuff like that to help keep it interactive. And I'm sure that the speakers will also be going into the chat afterwards and answering questions and making sure that they get, that they're interacting as well. But we want to make this one of the highest quality events in our industry. This isn't, like right now there's a big push for virtual, in the sense of we're going to put together a physical conference and live stream it. That's cool, but this is all live stream. So I'm putting all of our attention on the live stream itself. So it's going to be a pretty cool event. We got multi-cam set up. We've got lights. We've got all the cool graphics. Our team is working crazy right now to get this all together. And I'm really, it's going to be great to have all these people on our stage and being able to collaborate with each other. So
you said all the cool graphics, but you don't have your face superimposed over swimsuit models.
I try to keep my face off of it as much as I can.
He does too.
Yeah. Have any questions about the summit on there, Olivia?
No, but I do have want to hear your process and your thought process on something from Pate that he sent me directly.
Yeah, let's talk to Pate.
He has it's going to be similar to your pattern, slightly different thought pattern that you had earlier.
Can you copy paste that into the comments?
That
and throw it
is
on the
what
screen?
I'm doing. I'm going to read it to you first.
Cool.
So homeowner is hit with hail, light
Like the
water
homeowner or their
intrusion.
house?
I hope their house.
I'm
was.
thinking the
they
house.
could be hit by hail too.
Light water intrusion happens. Homeowner hires a contractor. Contractor does the mitigation for X price. So say 10 grand. The incurred cost of that 10 grand happens. A bill for that 10 grand is submitted to the carrier. Carrier has no and insured disputes. Contractor liens the property. Insured pays contractor because of the lien. Actual damages are now X for mitigation. Water says mitigation is, say, X minus 20,000. There's now minimal evidence due to mitigation. So I'm putting this up for you guys.
I think he's giving us a different scenario for the question that we really
that's
had earlier.
exactly what he
It
wants.
sounds like a bar exam question or something.
Is there a lot of X's in algebra in the bar exam? Yeah.
I've seen something like this.
Yeah. Similar fact patterns. All right. So yeah, this does happen with mitigation quite often. And that's really where this question was so interesting, because this happens all the time on the mitigation side. And
You
John's
also
saying that
cannot
it's occurring
use
a
the
lot
easy
more.
out of a lawsuit, by the way. That's his
Oh, he-
stipulation.
You're going to take away the attorney.
Yes.
I
I'm
don't
out
get to
the
answer
equation.
any of this.
No, he can comment. Just you can't just sue
You
off
have
the
to
rip.
Completely stay silent. Just drink your beer.
I love it. I love it.
It's still an incurred cost. It would still be argued. I don't understand what the actual question is. Is there a question in there?
And let me say, big picture wise, is
You're
the
supposed to be
question
quiet.
is
The question is how does the homeowner get paid?
Is that what the question was?
I mean,
Yeah, he
essentially.
wants you to work
All
through
right.
it.
All right.
I'm reading it
hopefully
here, but
in-
there's a lot going on.
if the carrier is able to see the interior damage prior to the work at all, I'm assuming that that's not the case for this scenario.
But exactly, because they're saying there's now minimal evidence due to the mitigation.
So yeah, so there must not be anything that the carrier has even been able to see, or maybe because of COVID, they didn't want to go inside, which happens all the time now.
Hey,
But the
it's not-
homeowner didn't take any photos. They didn't have company cam. The contractor didn't document it.
Yeah. Do they owe for
That's-
that? Honestly, no. I don't think that would be hard to fight for. I mean, this is an evidence-based system. We have to prove the loss. The insured is required to prove the loss.
100%. And John said this earlier: document, pictures. You got to show this evidence. And this kind of tailors back around to that question I believe Josh asked earlier, where a contractor says that the price is X amount, but you have no evidence to support that. Well, I could see that being a denial. Like, you got to document these things. You got to have proof. You got to have foundation for.
Does the policy language state that specifically?
It states that you have to prove the loss. So you have
Right.
to present the damaged materials or the damage to the insurance carrier as often as they reasonably require. That's generally what
Right.
it says.
Yeah.
So if you have nothing to present to them, if you got no photos, you got no documentation, then you haven't met the conditions of the policy.
You got a bill from a contractor.
Yeah, that's all you have.
You have their testimony. I mean,
You have
I guess from an attorney standpoint, you have that, right? But since
Would you
we're
be able to
not
work with
allowed to
your-
use the attorney, though.
Certainly we can work with hearsay, but hey, look, we need the pictures. I mean, it's one of those, we can't bring a rabbit out of a hat. We got to have some type of supporting documentation. At the end of the day, if that happens, the homeowner hired the wrong contractor or mitigation company. I mean, they have to support what work they are providing into that house and how much it cost.
I mean, and the homeowner can't even sue the contractor at that point either, right? For causing them to miss out on, or could they sue the contractor for causing them to not be able to collect off this insurance claim?
If the contractor was negligent, yes. If they did not follow
Interesting.
proper guidelines, yes. But I mean, because really, what I think it kind of goes vice versa in the sense where the contractor said, I did this work. It cost $40,000. Your insurance company only paid $30,000. Mr. Homeowner, you owe me $10,000. And the homeowner's saying, look, the insurance company won't pay it because you didn't document it. Now that's a wrestling match, right? I mean, that would be tough going back and forth.
So what if the homeowner has documented these photos? All you have is homeowner photos of it happening.
Oh, absolutely.
And then
Work
the
with
bill.
That's the insured's duty is to.
I think
protect the
that's
name.
enough, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
at that point, you would take that claim on, right, Matt?
I'd fight it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
But if the photos didn't exist,
as long as I agree with the damages being caused by hail, I would take that on. And that's the hard part because we're talking about water intrusion caused by hail, which is
maybe it
definitely difficult.
Maybe it
enforce.
broke a vent or something.
Oh, it totally did. It broke a vent. The
And then it
3/4
rained.
inch hail that
Oh,
we
wow.
have in Georgia broke a vent.
Yes.
I'm not a huge fan of taking on half-inch hail claims that we get quite often in
See,
Georgia.
Now, Pate's making an interesting point here because he's saying there's some nefarious contractors that make damage models off this method, where they do minimal evidence or minimal photo taking on purpose.
Mhm.
Essentially, is what I think he's referring to. And so, at that point, though, essentially, what you guys are saying is that contractor could be held in negligence for not providing enough evidence of what they're actually doing on their job.
That's interesting.
And then here's the thing: can you bring some type of action for a negligence? Potentially, will there be any fruit at the end of the road? Who knows? I mean, seriously, when it comes to that, I mean, you can bring actions for a lot of things, right?
Here's the other kicker of this, though, too. And I'm not an attorney, though, but if the homeowner pays the contractor, doesn't that indicate satisfaction after the job's been done?
Yeah, if it's.
I mean, that would be the contractor's defense, right?
Certainly, but I think in the fact pattern is that there is funds that were not paid, right, to the contractor. Like there was a difference between what the insurance carrier is wanting to pay versus what the contractor's work actually cost.
Well, that's not what they're saying, though. He's saying that the contractor got paid for all the work and then liened it, or okay, so they got paid because of the lien. Okay, so the contractor didn't get paid. He liens the house. The homeowner pays the contractor to get rid of the lien. That's interesting too. And so now the insured is going back to, the insured is going back to the carrier and saying, "Here's my bill because I had to pay this because this contractor liened my house." Does the carrier then owe?
Ultimately, I think that this comes down
This is going to wind up in
to
litigation.
this is the conditions section of the
Right.
policy. You need to find out what is required by this policy to gain coverage. And in most of the conditions will be presenting the damage to the carrier, being able to prove the loss in some form or fashion. If the contractor is able to provide some photos, I think I would want to see what the contractor's contract says to determine if the contractor was doing this based off of something where they included any information about the insurance carrier that make you believe that they are going to work with the insurance carrier on your behalf to present them with all this in order to get themselves paid. If they were going to do all that, then the insured would probably be under the impression that the contractor is going to take those photos and submit those to the carrier.
Let me ask you this, though. In Florida, where contractors have such strict licensing requirements, is that a part? Could they potentially lose their license for? Because I mean, if the contractor knew, hey, this is clearly could be potentially an insurance claim situation that we need to document the crap out of this, and they don't, could that be I mean, that's got to be part of their licensing requirements or something, right?
I don't think that is part of their license. Their requirement is to, they're licensed to know how to roof. Obviously, they're not licensed to know how to deal with an insurance claim. Part of their licensure would be maybe, I mean, they have to abide by code. They have to be able to submit a permit and anything required for the permit, but that wouldn't be anything that's required to send to a carrier necessarily. I don't know.
I just think it's prudent. Contractors document the crap out of everything.
They should.
Just
Everybody
Exactly
should.
right.
I
Everything
think
just
the
needs to be
insurance should back it
documented.
up as well. I can't tell you how many times a claim has been overturned because I suddenly got a photo from a policyholder that had, hail in the yard. Even if it was small in the photo, it made a difference because the carrier was adamant that there was definitely no hail that fell on that date at that property.
Right.
And we can show them evidence otherwise. Just having any kind of documentation makes a world of difference for a claim. So if you don't have a public adjuster involved that's doing all this, and you don't have a contractor that knows what they're doing, an insured really ought to be taking those photos themselves. It's probably good practice for any claim for the insured to do that. If you get in a car accident, the first thing I've always done is jumped outside and take a whole bunch of photos. I know that that's what those accident attorneys want you to do.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Those attorneys always want you to do something.
And John, to answer your question, just because I'm not a contracting license type attorney, and I'm sure there's attorneys out there that do that to advocate for a contractor to get their license in a state such as Florida, that, I don't want to just guess on some of those elements that you asked.
Yeah.
I like to talk about things I 100% know, confident,
I
that
agree.
know what I'm talking about. So that's how I
So
say
is
about
a
that.
sworn affidavit of the damages, someone they put it in writing and said, this is what we attest is true. It's still technically hearsay, but is that enough in the absence of other evidence to trigger coverage? That would be tough for a PA. Now, I've done similar things, not to the extent of getting all the interior damage approved, but when we're talking about how the timeline progresses, we'll get an affidavit from the insured that says, this is what happened here, this is what happened to them, this is what happened then. And that is good evidence for that, but I still don't think that would be sufficient evidence to say that something was damaged, because the carrier still has to be provided the opportunity to view the damaged property.
We would be in a dream world if the insurance company paid out on everything a homeowner signed a sworn affidavit on. I mean, let's just be honest, right?
Would you ever
Like-
supplement for something from a signed affidavit?
No.
Yeah, that would be a dream world for the insurance carrier to say, oh, well, Mr. Smith sent me a signed affidavit. Let's pay
Well,
for the roof, or let's pay for this.
Let me rephrase that. If the
Okay.
contractor really asks us to, and because we operate as them a lot of times. Okay, so we are XYZ roofer when we call them. If they really want to push us and say, well, we want you to ask for this, I mean, we'll ask for it, but that doesn't mean the carrier is going to give it to us. And are we going to actually fight for it? I mean, we have no leg to stand on. So let me say, like, I mean, if they gave us a sworn affidavit, said, here, get this paid for. I mean, we try, but I guarantee, I mean, we already know what the answer is going to be.
Yeah. And let me be clear as well. Having a sworn affidavit helps. It doesn't hurt by any means, right? Unless there's a conflicting story that happened in the past. But it doesn't hurt. But just because you have that sworn affidavit doesn't mean the insurance carrier is going to pay. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Makes sense.
Then you have a spouse that writes something in an affidavit that's completely different from what the other spouse says. And they start bickering through affidavits. And
Yeah.
they use the entire insurance claim to resolve long-term issues that they've had in their marriage.
I'd hate to be in that
That would be
household.
terrible. I don't want to be on that claim.
Do we have another question, Olivia?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we-
this
we
one
have a
looks
fun
like it's
one.
for you,
This one's
Remington.
just for you, bud.
I'm thinking this is pre-appraisal. According to DEF law attorney Michael Bagley, while Lamb versus Allstate is helpful, there is some concern as to how strong it is. How do Georgia residents bury Lamb versus Allstate, and what kind of case would you be shopping for
I want
to
some
get it
popcorn
done?
for this
I want some
question. I really want to.
Yeah, we could go
Yeah.
on and on about
I'm gonna
Lamb
sit
v.
back.
Allstate. I know who Michael Bagley is. I practiced against him a good bit in the past, and actually currently do right now. DEF is Drew Eckel and Farnham. It's a law firm in Atlanta. It's one of the bigger ones that does property defense. And to specifically answer your question, it says, how do Georgia residents bury Lamb v. Allstate? And that is, you have to overturn Lamb v. Allstate. That's the way to bury Lamb v. Allstate. And the second part of that question is, and what kind of case would you be shopping for to get it done. This is the main element of overturning any type of case law, whether it be land v. Allstate or some type of case law in John's territory or jurisdiction. You got to have the right client. Like seriously, you got to have the right client that's ready to ride this thing out for 3 years. And that's just the honest truth. You got to have damages in which there's not interior leaks coming in every 2 months, right? It's got to be something
that can go 3 years.
Yeah, and the homeowner can do it. That is truly the recipe that's needed for something like that with land v. Allstate. That is the number one concern. Obviously, having a valid claim and a valid case always comes in it, but having that right client is definitely very, very important with trying to overturn any type of case law.
So
that's been like the worst thing in Georgia, though. That case, terrible. It's been terrible for you guys.
It killed the state. It removed the minor amount of leverage that we had. There's no dispute resolution available to Georgia. It's a rough state.
And guys, what does it do big picture wise? These insurance carrier attorneys, these law firms get paid by the hour. So instead of these claims getting resolved with a public adjuster and going to appraisal and getting them resolved, they funnel into litigation. They're getting paid more. They're getting more business. They're going to fight this thing tooth and nail. And it's sad, but it's reality. And that's big picture.
Yeah.
So we've got more from Pate.
There's so many things about that whole comment that makes me want to cry.
We could do 5 hours on
it. It'll be ugly. Yeah. There will be snot running down into my beard.
Well, because you think of how many people have been hurt by that precedent-setting case.
It's been rough.
It's terrible.
Definitely needs to be fixed. Now, there are other states that are even trying to go down that same path. I don't know if any have actually gone as far as Georgia has with it. It's been rough. Let's get off that topic before I
right.
So Pate wants to know, does this bring to light an issue on the duty to mitigate portion of the policy given the water loss timelines of the IRCRC versus the duty to allow the carrier to adequately investigate under the policy? Duty to mitigate versus investigate under the policy.
This is actually it's an interesting point that he's trying to uncover slowly by asking us all these questions. So a mitigation company does have to start the drying process, bring you back to stable immediately. If water is allowed to sit for 48 to 72 hours, then mold and growth can set in of some kind. So the IICRC Council does require you to make the everything stable, but that's the key. They bring it to a stable point. They don't rebuild. So when they tear all this out and they have dry logs and they have moisture maps and they have all the documentation that a mitigation company should have, if they're IICRC certified, then they know how to provide all that kind of stuff. Then there really shouldn't be any issues. You provide that documentation to the carrier. Let me go a little bit further. That'll go more towards his point. I've seen mitigation companies remove a lot more than they should or is necessary, because once they remove all that, then the carriers typically end up having to replace the additional amount that wasn't necessary to bring the property to a stable condition. So if that's the case and the carrier can't provide proper documentation, it's not exactly the insured's fault, but it's not the insurance carrier's issue either. And a lot of times they end up getting stuck with a lot of that. But most of the insurance carriers don't actually want to go out on site for a water mitigation loss until it's stable, until it's to the point of being dry, so they can go in and see the property in its condition prior to a rebuild starting.
Yeah. John, what do you think about this question?
Well, I think it's interesting. So if they don't do it but they are certified, what does the certification mean? Could they go after the certification or after IICRC on that?
Oh, that's getting deep now. That's a whole different layer. That's a good thought.
That's a fantastic question. So that we can go down that same road with anybody that has any kind of certification. So engineers or industrial hygienists.
Would an insurance carrier try to go after that Let's say that the insurance carrier paid for it and then subrogated that back to the contractor for not providing that information. Could they do that?
Insurance carriers subrogate against contractors every single day, whether it be pressure washing or somebody replacing a roof. There's got to be some type of negligence on the side.
It's got to be,
Which is them. They're certified, but they were negligent because they didn't follow their own certification.
Right.
I think that they could. I think that if it's the contractor's negligence that led to the additional funds being paid by the carrier, then it absolutely could. It's still part of the direct loss because that contractor wouldn't have been out there had it not been for the loss.
Right.
So it's still part of the direct loss that the carrier owes, but the carrier has a right to subrogate whenever they can, I guess.
Whenever they paid something that they shouldn't have paid for.
Yeah, if it's they can go after the aggrieving party, and the aggrieving party in this case, and the way that you're describing it, would have been the contractor. And a certification, that makes sense that they might go after that. I doubt they ever would, but they could.
But they could, technically.
That's a good question, John.
Here's my stance on this question. First, go by what John says. Document the entire way, this mitigation company, right? Seriously. And I know we keep on saying it, but it's just the truth. Document it. But the definition of mitigation is to stop further damage. I would say to that homeowner, commercial property owner, get the work done, document it, and it's not your fault that the insurance carrier didn't make it out to the property in sufficient time. That's my stance. So get the work done, stop further damage, document it, and hey, if they want to fight it out on the back end, go ahead and do it.
Are you saying that they should go forward with a rebuild too?
No, I'm not saying necessarily the rebuild, because rebuild is not necessarily mitigation, right?
No.
Right. It's not stopping further loss.
Well, it is stopping further ALE.
That is true, but that's a whole different element.
So.
And Paige says this is a horribly slippery slope. That's hard to say. Why would the carrier not subrogate every time?
Because it takes effort and money to do so. If they can subrogate for $1 million versus maybe $8,000 or $9,000 difference, does it make sense to hire an attorney to recover $8,000 or $9,000?
Yeah, exactly. At that point, their bean counters are saying it's not worth it. That's why they're not even touching it.
It goes back to same exact. Why do insurance companies not invoke appraisal every time? It's because there's a guy that crunched the numbers and said,
multiply it though times 100.
We're not sexist here.
Not sexist.
Let's say it was a $200,000 mitigation that turned into $1 million mitigation. Are they going to subrogate that one?
It depends on there has to be that negligence. So obviously, if it's turning into that and there's valid reason and you can prove that, then there would be nothing to subrogate against. But if it's the contractor that's just over mitigating, if that's really happening and it's not just what the carrier is using as their defense, I guess, then yeah, I think they could. I don't see any reason why they couldn't subrogate.
The set of facts,
and they probably would. Why wouldn't they? That's a lot of money.
Right.
If you're working at that level as a contractor, you should be careful and document the crap out of everything. So today's show is brought to you by document the crap out of everything.
No, that is the statement of the day.
Do it every time.
It is upside down. Oh well. I thought I'd just give a company campaign.
Yeah.
No, but for real though, like it's so easy. It was hard years ago. I remember, the first sales contest my dad won was a digital camera that had it was a Sony digital camera with a floppy disk in it in like 2000. Okay. That was revolutionary to our industry because every adjuster had that camera because it made it easy to get photos off of it and onto a computer. Mm-hmm. Nowadays you have no reason not to document. I mean, I had an adjuster hand me one time actual photos. Like he went and printed them off at like a CVS or something and gave them to me after Hurricane Irma, or a homeowner. I mean, gave them to me as the adjuster, and I was like, "What am I doing with this?" But I mean, at least they had the photos. But I was like, "This is so weird to have actual photos." Like you can email this to me, and they were like 90 years old, and they didn't know what that meant. So
I had a contractor send me a Christmas gift. It was a pen that had a secret camera on it. I think that he wanted me to try to entrap the carriers doing stuff on it, but the it was such crappy video quality. It didn't make any difference whatsoever. And I forgot how to use it because it only had like I couldn't even get the video off of it at some point. How is a carrier going to prove they over mitigated? That's the problem. That's why mitigation companies and whoever else might be over mitigating do this. It's very difficult to.
Wait, you mean contractors are over mitigating every single day?
No, not every
Okay.
day. Yes, every hour. It happens, and it's
so hard though. There's so many like thought processes in mitigation. I mean, when I was out in Colorado dealing with this claim with C3 Group, with that we shot that video, the fire claim. The interesting thing about that one was it's not a burnout. Like the house didn't burn to the ground. What they're fighting about is the fact that Surf Pro or whoever went out there and looked at that house. I don't know if I should have said that, but oh well. They went out there and cleaned the house, charged them like $8,000 or $9,000 to clean a house. Well, how do you clean porous cedar on the ceilings and stuff? Like, how do you get all the smoke out of that? And the house has no roof right now. It hasn't had a roof for like half the roof's gone. So they're just running the heat constantly in that house, which their propane bill is insane. And so they're dealing with the fact that the house doesn't smell bad, but what's going to happen when they put the roof back on it and close that house again? Is it going to smell like smoke? And now at that point, what do you have to do? How do you get it out of all these little things? And this is what I'm saying, like this mitigation, smoke removal, all these things like this, you know, in the mitigation company's mind, they did the right thing, you know, handling it the way they did, the fire cleaning people. But is it really the right way? And is it, how far is too far? How far is not enough? Like, I think it's so subjective, and you got to have some really, really good evidence one way or the other. And so the carrier didn't perform an air quality test. So who knows if it's enough? There's no test done. So what is the PA having to do? They're having to perform an actual air quality test with actual experts and pay all this money to get this stuff done to prove one way or the other. Now, whichever way it goes, if the air quality test comes back and said, hey, the house is great, then fine, it's done. It's no big deal. But the policyholders being forced to hire a PA to go down this road because they're not getting, you know, the right answers done. Now, how many homeowners actually take and don't do the air quality test and end up living in a house that causes them to be sick 20 years from now, and they can't go back and sue that carrier over that because it's really their negligence at that point. And it's, you know, so it's kind of this whole world, the insurance restoration world, where we're dealing with these catastrophes with water, fire, hail, wind, whatever it is. There's never going to be a playbook to this. At the end of the day, it's all about evidence. It's all about documentation. It's all about having your ducks in a row so that that policyholder is indemnified.
So in the mitigation world, there is a playbook. There's
but it's
I mean, they have protocols set. They even have one coming out very soon for fire. If it hasn't come out, it would have dropped very recently if it hasn't.
And while that playbook exists, it's still though subject to so many variables.
Yeah, the contractor themselves have to make decisions and based off of the variables that are there. And as long as they can justify those decisions, I think that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. They have to be able to justify it through documentation and evidence gathering. They can't look at their job as just, let's just demolish all of this and put it back together, because that's what a contractor naturally wants to do.
Burn it all.
Slow down. Yeah,
finish the deal. That'll make it easier.
I mean, that would make it a lot easier.
It'd be like the Robin Hood of fire losses, the arson that goes and just finishes the job. Right? He makes it so much easier. The insurance going to get the full quantity because he.
To piggyback off of what you said, John, it's when it comes to restoration contractor, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Right. It's so subjective. It's, they did not perform enough mitigation. You know, they overly mitigated this claim. And like you said, it being a subjective standard where you can get somebody to say they over mitigated, they under mitigated on the same exact loss. It's a tough position for contractors. It really is.
as long as they can justify it, I think that
As long as
they'd be
it's
safe enough. I don't think any jury would really go in and say, well, you were being negligent or fraudulent when you show them your thought process on exactly how you came to that decision.
And the ones that can do that are never going to have to deal with a jury anyways, because the carrier is going to know this
100%.
was. It's not a. They don't want to go to a jury unless they absolutely think they can win.
Right.
Do you guys deal with water claims?
Very rarely.
Mostly roofs?
Yeah, mostly hail damage, wind damage. That's the core of our business. We have the skills to deal with water mitt and bigger commercial stuff, and we're starting to build out that sales process for those as well to start to bring those in. But the thing with those is they're so few and far between, and especially like fire claims. Like fire claims are something that we typically don't get into because every fire claim is different. They're very complex. Yeah. Water mitt claims are complex as well. And you almost, if you're a water mitt contractor, you shouldn't be using a company like Balance. Let me just be straight up. Like, I mean, we can write, let me rephrase that. We can write like an estimate that'll get you maybe 90% of the way, but you got to take that ESX file and you're going to have to really take it the last 10%, which is usually what people do when they get our files when they're that complex. They're going to have to take it and add more to it, take away some. They're going to have to tweak it to make it, because we unless we have someone on the ground going through that property that knows it inside and out, it's just not going to be 100% accurate.
How often do you have someone on the ground?
Very never.
Very never.
Very never.
That's more than normal never.
Yeah, we just we rely.
Very never. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
There
Very
are
never.
different levels of never. We have any more questions, Olivia?
Yeah, we got, kind of a statement by Sandy. She says there's actually a time limit of 45 days in many states where the sworn affidavit of facts, if not challenged or objected by the insurance company, sets the claim up for an attorney to file a summary judgment motion.
When a claim gets into litigation and we have affidavits, and I'm saying the plaintiff side, the homeowner, the commercial property owner has affidavits to support the damages that's in their lawsuit. Yes, affidavits are a huge part of the summary judgment argument. However, defense counsel can come up with their own affidavits, such as from a IA or a desk adjuster, or whoever might be on their side, and file that as a response to a summary judgment. And at that point, if there's a issue material fact, that's the standard in summary judgment, then at that point, they would overcome summary judgment. They would defeat that summary judgment argument. So yes, you can certainly use affidavits as a tool to obtain summary judgment. In fact, you have to have some type of under oath type testimony, whether it be in a deposition or sworn affidavit, but they can combat those with their own affidavits where there's a genuine issue of material fact. And at that point, there is no summary judgment and it would proceed to the jury.
What if you submit a proof of loss? It only has a sworn affidavit, doesn't have any documentation on it. And the policy says that they will pay within 60 days. I just answered my own question in my head. Upon receipt of a proof of loss and an agreement is made with us. And it's that and an agreement is made with us that would be the kicker. So never mind. I'm not going to continue that question. If you
they don't respond,
like that, good for you. I don't.
Yeah.
I wish I did. You guys don't send in any kind of demand for payment or anything as a supplement company, do you?
No, we can't.
Do you
We're
submit
not.
invoices?
Nope.
Never.
No, we don't, because that's now we're doing we can't submit an invoice, because at that point now we're saying that this contractor did A, B, C, and D, and we don't know that they did A, B, C, and D. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
100, unless they give us a ton of photos and
Neither do we. We submit invoices. We're a pass through for invoices often. It's not like we're going out to verify that the work that they said is done is actually done. Unless the insured calls and tells us that there's a problem.
How does that, and this is a legal question, so I don't know. I mean, I know it comes from our legal counsel as to why we don't do that, but specifically, I know it has to do with the fact that we are never on the job site. We can't. If we submit an invoice, are we then party to that contractor, the potential of them, committing fraud?
I think I don't think you would be if you didn't know. It's
one of the elements of fraud. You got to hit all the elements is intent.
Yeah.
Well, you submit that estimate or invoice. Do you have the intent as the public adjuster, whatever it might be, to commit fraud against the insurance company? That to me would be hard for them to prove unless there's email exchanges back and forth with the contractor, whoever it might be. But that's an element of fraud that must be proved. And I think it would be tough.
Yeah.
But I see exactly what you're saying, and even attorneys, I got to take the client or the contractor at their word a lot of times. And I have to submit that as proof, and just hope that it's actually truthful.
We've had claims where the carrier went back out to the property after we submitted one of the contractor's invoices, and they determined that some of the items on there hadn't been completed. And we were like, we didn't know, and we submitted them all of the documentation exactly how we got it from the contractor to show that we weren't a party to that. It never came back down on our heads. We worked and cooperated with the carrier to find out where the fraud was happening. But that was a rare case several years ago.
How much time did you spend on that?
Say again?
How much time did you spend on that? I
think we submitted maybe a couple hours.
Okay. I just know, like, from our point of view, like, we're such a turn and burn, operation. I mean, we run hundreds of claims every week. And so it's something that we would, if we can avoid it, we're not going to even touch it.
Yeah.
So it's a simple step. The contractor can submit their own invoice.
We definitely had that question in mind after that occurred to us several years ago. And I think we wanted to make sure that we were safe.
Yeah, and I think at the beginning, they may have attempted to do that, and then as the company became smarter, they may have had that situation. I don't know the reason why we don't, other than I know that it's from a legal perspective. Our counsel has advised us not to.
Yeah, you might as well just stick to that. Obviously, lawyers know what they're doing, right?
I hope
sometimes. You'd be surprised. Literally last week, I had a file, and defense counsel called me. Within 30 seconds, I knew this was their first property insurance claim. I was just like, oh my God. Like, they were like, I was like, well, we could go to appraisal to get this resolved. He's like, well, it was already in appraisal. I said, well, how do you figure? And he said, well, the public adjuster already met the IA at the property to try to have a scope. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to, I was like, do you have a supervisor I can talk to? Like, let's just get this, but you'd be surprised.
How often does that happen to you? I mean, it happens to us on the adjuster side all the time. But
it happens every once in a while. Typically, insurance carriers like to use the same exact law firm, the same exact attorneys that know exactly what they're doing. Every once in a while, when there's a different insurance carrier that's not in the main market, if you will, we'll hire a firm. And within the first 30 seconds, I know that this attorney doesn't know what he's doing. Like, truthfully.
I think when we meet an adjuster on site, within the first 30 seconds, we know if they're going to be a complete dick or not.
Yeah, there you go.
Usually by the time they pull up, you can tell.
Yeah. The way that they shut their door.
Yep.
The way that
they look around. How long it takes for them to get out of the vehicle.
Oh, yeah. Dude, I had an adjuster almost run over my foot once. I went up to his doorway, and because he wasn't talking to me, he didn't talk to me on the roof at all. We got down. I said, well, what do you think? He said, well, I think that we are good. So then I said, so what does that mean specifically? Do you mean that we're talking about a full roof replacement here? And he suddenly gets this big wide eyes, like, and runs to his car. Well, he walked really fast to his car, which was right in front of mine. Jumps in his car, slams the door, and I go up to his window, and I was like, "What the hell? What? Knock, knock, knock." Dude, I don't know what's going on here. Did I offend you in some way? And he's digging. He's heavy, looking for something away from me.
A coverage.
So he doesn't have to look for me. And you can see him visibly just, I know I'm going to have to open that window now. There's no way to justify me not looking at another human being as they're tapping on my window. So then he opens his window, And I said, what was that about, man? I was just asking you what you meant by that. I just need you to clarify the statement. And he says, I know better than to talk to a public adjuster about anything. And he takes off within inches of my toes. Inches.
man.
Damn.
Anyway, that was fun.
You gotta love it, right? This
Oh,
is
yeah.
a great industry.
Oh,
And it's not even their money. It's like,
how do people find more out about the Contractor Summit and who would benefit from it? I
Contractor
wanted to
Summit?
ask you this. Do you think
Mhm.
IAs would benefit from attending your summit?
I think anybody could benefit from attending the summit. And I'll tell you, like, I don't care who you are. If you're in business, IAs specifically, you guys, the IAs are going to lose their jobs. let's be real for a minute. I mean,
Because
I was
you're
an IA. IAs are their time is very limited. That's why a lot of them are becoming PAs. They're going into the contracting world. They're taking the skills, especially the good ones. The good ones, if you're a good IA, you've been doing this for a long time, you're probably going to lose your job real soon because you're expensive to the insurance companies. Those bean counters do not like you. And you're costing them money. It does not benefit the insurance company to have knowledgeable IAs on staff.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, because it costs them more money. They can get someone with no knowledge, train them the way they want them to do things, and they are machines to create guidelined estimates that save the insurance companies money.
But if those same IAs that are about to lose their jobs go to your summit,
they can learn all about our world in the contracting world, and not the presumed contracting world that they're used to. There's an actual real world out here where people are legitimately making money responsibly and ethically. And that's what this is about. This is teaching sales, marketing, finances, all the things. And not just that, but the shift that's happening within the entire world right now. The economy has changed drastically in the last 8 months. People are working from home. I mean, I'm at home right now. I literally have an exact duplicate of my office that I have at the balance office in my house.
Really?
I do.
Exactly.
And the reason, I kid you not, I have the exact same desk, the same monitor setup, the same. I mean, it looks just like I'm in my office sometimes, other than I don't have the shelves behind me that's in my office. Like,
you
but I have.
ever get done at the end of the day from your office at home and think that you need to get in your car and go home?
Sometimes
that happens to you.
And my
It's
dog
like being in VR for too long.
No, but but you think about this for a second. So many people are in this exact same scenario. I mean, I think 30% of our workforce are now coming into the office, and then they go home. Like, we end up shutting down because someone else tests positive, and then everything's got to change because now we got to be careful with liability. I mean, we have 40 some people that work in our office, right? So it's so fluid right now, and this is the way everything is. I mean, all these major tech companies are paying employees to not come into work anymore. I mean, Twitter's giving them, or somebody's becoming $20,000 to move out of San Francisco and take a 10% pay cut. So they're giving $20,000 up front plus a 10% pay cut to go and live somewhere else, wherever they want, and work remotely. So what does that mean for people in the way that they do things? They're changing. They're having to adapt their homes to now be able to work from home. And so they're viewing their houses differently. They're using them a lot more, whereas before they would use them for only, to come home for a few hours, sleep, go back to work the next day, right? And on the weekends, you're home. Now you're home all the time. So you're more wanting to make your home more livable because you're spending a lot more time there, which is changing the entire economy system. And everything that we do as contractors is shifting. Commercial is changing. They're downsizing. So what does that mean? There's an opportunity right now. There's an opportunity.
Just put a thought in my head. I'm going to interject real quick.
Yeah,
because what you're saying is great, but the insurance policies don't provide coverage if you have a office at home that you're working from necessarily, if that wasn't part of your insurance application, or if you haven't notified your insurance carrier that you are now using part of your home as your place of employment. You think that's likely to come up in future cases?
They can try to make that argument, but at the end of the day, that's your dwelling. That's
awful
where you
PR
live.
move.
Yeah. Oh, my
That's
gosh.
true. That's 100% true.
Yeah, exactly. I could see them maybe
We're all
arguing
safe
like content.
because insurance companies don't want to look bad. They never want to look bad. That's why they approve every claim.
Yeah, right. But you should change your content coverages. I agree with that.
That's 100%.
Yeah.
I could see them using that angle. Like, I don't know how much equipment you have there at the house, but you know,
Not
if
like I
now
have
you have if now you have $40,000 worth of equipment at your house compared to what you had 6 months ago, you know, I could see something. I could see that angle. I don't think it would hold water because you obviously have contents limits, but no, that would be a horrible PR move. 100% agree.
Well, we're
Well-
way over time, like usual. John, is there anything that you want to tell my listeners that
I just hope that everyone understands the opportunity right now. The opportunity is huge. Whenever there's major shifts in the world, there's major opportunity, whereas people can gain market share or they can lose market share. And a lot of people, a lot of contractors that have been doing this for 20, 30, 40 years are trying to weather this storm thinking things will go back to normal. I mean, I already just announced they pushed everything back till August, September, something like that today. They're only doing a virtual conference. We don't know how much longer it's going to last, but at the end of the day, people have changed their behaviors drastically. And this is not something that we should lightly just think that this is going to go back to normal. I know contractors here in Indianapolis that have been in business for years that are trying to weather the storm, while there's contractors that have been in business for 2 years that are doing 10, 11, $12 million because they have adapted so quickly because they don't have bad habits. They're going through it as it goes, as it happens. They're changing the way that they do business, and they're experiencing phenomenal growth because there's this massive shift right now. What that's going to mean for the next year, I don't know, but that's why I invited the minds that I did. I'm not speaking at the conference. This is not a conference that I want to speak at. I want other people to come and speak on this drastic thing and tell us what they see from their perspective. When you're a contractor, you see what you see in front of you because you're working, you're grinding, you're going through things. But when you go to a summit, which is what we called it the summit for a reason, because you climb a mountain. We were at Pikes Peak last week shooting content. You go up to the top of these mountains and you look out and you see for miles and hundreds of miles on end, right? You have this perspective change. That's what the summit is. It's a chance for you to experience a different perspective that can possibly change the way that you're doing business and give you that catalyst that'll ignite something within your business to have phenomenal growth in the future. And that's what you should be experiencing from conferences, those minds and those ideas that are revolutionary and from a whole different perspective that can change what's going on. So come check it out. That's all.
Awesome.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you being on the show.
Matt, and I voted for you, most influential, of course.
What about best pal?
I that as well. I think I gave TJ Ware though Hurricane Hero because he's just killing it. I don't know if you were on that one or not. But congratulations on the nomination. That's really cool. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. So
Awesome.
I'm excited. Hopefully, when the storm happens, we'll see what happens. They pushed it back already as well. But either way, it's an honor to be here with you, man. And it's cool being on this side and not on your side because I don't have to do anything. I just hang out,
Well, if you really enjoyed it, I'd love to have you on the show again. Honestly, you brought up a lot of questions in my head, and we got really deep into some of these subjects, and I appreciate you being here.
I appreciate that, and we'll talk to you. I'd love to have you on the American Contractor Show soon as well. So we'll work on that.
That's a life goal of mine.
There you go.
Life goal.
No, man, we'd love to have you. Your mind is so awesome, and the way that you guys are doing business, what you're doing in Georgia, that's not an easy state, and you guys have some very unique challenges, and for that, kudos to you, my friend, for sticking in there and working hard to make things better for the residents of Georgia. Ultimately, it's great for contractors, it's great for owners, but ultimately, you're helping homeowners, policyholders be indemnified, and that is not an easy task, and it's extremely, extremely noble of you. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. So that's it, guys.
Thanks.
We will see you next Tuesday. Who's on the show next Tuesday, Olivia?
Next Tuesday, we are not doing a show.
Oh,
because
that's
it's
right.
Christmas.
That's why I'm wearing the tie.
We're shutting the
There's
books
no
on
Tuesday.
2020, people.
Well, Merry
The
Christmas.
following
everyone.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Who's
Following
after that?
Tuesday, we have Jasper Gooden.
That's right.
Jasper Good.
He's a contractor, an owner of a company called In Front Roofing, and I have an interesting story to tell when the first time I met him. But he is one of those rare contractors that grew properly in a really tough market, and is doing really well both in this industry, but in the retail side of things. And
Awesome.
I'm really impressed with this guy, which is really interesting.
Atlanta.
First impression of him. He's in multiple states now.
Awesome.
But I met him in the Atlanta market. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the Tuesday after next. That's
Cool.
after
The
Christmas.
29th.
The 29th.
I
it's
will.
not-
You want me to announce my Tuesday guest?
Yeah, do it.
Because
Yeah.
this one's really cool. I want to meet Jasper though, so I'm excited to hear that one because I want to hear his story. And I love doing contractor showcases. I love when contractors come on the show. That's my favorite. But we've got someone named Letitia Hankey coming on.
Okay.
And she is the national. She's a roofing contractor of the year from Roofing Contractor magazine for 2020. She runs a foundation that she's out of California. It's ARS Roofing, but she runs a foundation as well to help youth get involved in the trades. Phenomenal woman. She was on Mike Rowe's show recently, his Frontline show, and his Facebook show. I think had like 4 million views on that one. She was on the Kelly Clarkson show. She's got some unbelievable stuff. We were trying to get her for the summit. Due to COVID, it's really hard for her to travel, so we're not really going to be able to see her for that. But we are going to have her on the American Contractor Show next week. We're going to probably do a live show, which I haven't done very much lately, but it's going to be really cool to have her, and I'm really excited to introduce her to this side of the industry because California, like they're their own world out there, and so we don't get to hear about that very often. So to have Letitia on, like Google this lady, she's amazing. So I'm excited to have her on, and you need to get her on your show too.
Yeah. No. Well,
Yeah,
Olivia will end up
absolutely.
booking her immediately after your show, probably.
Go
I know.
please,
We already
please
have
do.
Jasper.
She would love it.
Tell her I'm reaching out.
Yeah.
Look her up, Letitia Hankey, Hanke.
Perfect.
So,
All right. Thanks, John.
guys,
Have a
thank you
wonderful
so
evening.
much. Merry Christmas. Yes, sir.
Merry
We'll see you
Christmas,
guys.
buddy.
Yeah,
Have a
you
good
too.
one, Olivia.
Bye.
Thank you, Olivia.
Should we throw up a gang